Everybody's got an opinion on the best Atlanta suburbs, but a lot of those lists fall apart the second you ask one simple question: best for who? Because some suburbs win on schools, some win on space, some convenience, and some win on price. So today I'm ranking my top 10 best Atlanta suburbs to live in 2026 based on the overall package: lifestyle, location, schools, value, long-term appeal, and most importantly, whether the price actually feels justified once you live there. I promise you will not guess my number one. Now, before we get to the top 10, a few suburbs just missed the cut. First is Sandy Springs. If your top priority is being close to Atlanta, Sandy Springs is very hard to beat. Job access, MARTA, major hospitals, proximity to the city, it does a lot extremely well. I just think it lives in a slightly different lane than the rest of the suburbs on this list, and it's very expensive to save 10 minutes on your commute. Next is Duluth. Duluth is one of the more interesting values in Metro Atlanta, a much better food scene than people expect, more diversity, a quietly cool and very slept on downtown, and in a lot of cases, more house for the money than some of the more hyped names that are further north. And then there's Suwanee, strong reputation, family friendly, nice town center, good parks, solid schools. It's a good suburb. Heck, it's a great suburb. I just don't think it beats the 10 that made the list when you compare price and total upside. So with that out of the way, let's count it down. At number 10, I've got Kennesaw. This is the practical choice. Kennesaw makes this list because it's one of the easier suburbs in Metro Atlanta to live in day to day. Cobb County schools, easy I-75 access, Kennesaw Mountain, Bear Parkway, plenty of shopping, plenty of restaurants, but still very residential. It just works. That's really the pitch here. Kennesaw is not trying to be the coolest suburb on the list. It's not trying to be the most charming or the most prestigious. It's just a very solid, very functional place to live, and usually at a much more approachable price than the other top tier suburbs, with a median home price usually somewhere between $400,000 and $450,000. So why is it only at number 10? Because once you start comparing it directly, it does well, but it loses in a lot of categories. It doesn't have the most lifestyle. It doesn't have the most space. It doesn't have the best downtown. It doesn't have the highest school ratings. So while Kennesaw is a very safe pick, it's just not a very exciting one, and that's why it lands here. Now, if you're trying to figure out which of these suburbs actually fits you best, that's what I help people do every day here in Metro Atlanta. My name's Joel. I'm a realtor here. I'm a local, and I help people relocate here all the time. My contact info is down in the description, and feel free to reach out with any questions anytime. At number 9, I've got Acworth, the lake choice. And for me, Acworth beats Kennesaw because it feels maybe a little bit more intentional. Downtown Acworth is one of the better small downtowns in the northwest suburbs. It's walkable, it's charming, and it actually feels like somewhere you'd choose to spend time instead of just kind of pass through. Then you add Lake Allatoona into the mix, and suddenly Acworth has a real lifestyle edge that Kennesaw just doesn't have. Because if prices are even remotely similar, and in Acworth's case is often a little bit better, I'm usually asking which suburb actually gives you something memorable for the money. And in that comparison, I think Acworth wins. Now, the reason I'm not putting it higher is that the overall package is still smaller. Smaller draw, smaller amenity base, less depth, less broad appeal than the suburbs above it. So I definitely like the value here. I also think there's a limit on how high Acworth belongs on an overall list like this. But if you want a suburb with some personality, lake access, and slower feel without going too far out, Acworth is a wonderful option. At number 8, I've got Milton. This is the luxury choice. Milton is amazing. If what you want is land, privacy, beautiful homes, horse properties, country club amenities, a more upscale version of suburban life, Milton is one of the best places anywhere around Atlanta to get that. Probably the best place. And being right next to Alpharetta helps a ton too, because you can enjoy all the restaurants, the shopping, and amenities over there without necessarily having to live right in the middle of it. So why is Milton so low? It's simple. The cost math is brutal. Median home price right now is $1.3 million. Now, the lifestyle is real, the prestige is real, but the premium is very real too. And for most buyers, it's probably not the smartest overall move. You are paying heavily for the land, the privacy, and the zip code. And if that's exactly what you want, Milton is an absolute dream come true. But for maybe the average person comparing suburbs head to head, this is where I start saying great price, just not the best overall value. Honestly, Milton is the kind of suburb where if you feel like you're stretching a lot to get in there, I would just say, just join the golf club. You don't necessarily need to buy the house. At number 7, I've got Roswell, the character pick. Roswell is one of the easiest suburbs on the list to fall in love with. Mature trees, more established neighborhoods, the restaurant on Canton Street, amazing, river access, historic character. Roswell has a feel to it that a lot of the newer suburbs just can't fake. It feels rooted, it feels lived in, it feels like a place with some great stories, and for a lot of buyers, that's the whole point. The challenge is you're gonna pay for that charm, and once you start comparing Roswell to the suburbs above it, around it, I don't always think the value is quite as strong. The vibe is fantastic, the day-to-day feel is awesome, but in a head-to-head against other options, I think Roswell just doesn't stand out in any particular category. So with a median home price of about $650,000, sometimes you just want to know that there's something tangible that you're getting. So if charm and character are your top priorities, Roswell could absolutely be higher for you. But on an overall ranking for 2026, I think number 7 is about the right spot. At number 6, I've got Marietta. This is the established pick. Marietta is one of the toughest suburbs on this list to rank because it does so many things pretty well. You've got Marietta Square, one of the coolest places around to visit and hang out. Really strong location right along I-75 with easy access around the northwest side. And then the whole East Cobb halo, which matters a lot when people start talking about school ratings, resale value, and long-term appeal. It's been a powerhouse around here for a very long time. That's what makes Marietta so strong, its range. It works for a lot of different buyers. And when you compare cost versus lifestyle, Marietta starts looking even better because you can still get a strong location, some character, and a good overall suburban setup without paying above or too much above the $500,000 median home price mark. Are there more expensive homes in Marietta? 100%, but it's actually become a decently affordable choice compared to some other options. So why isn't this higher? Because I think the top 5 all beat it in just a more specific way. It's just getting a little bit old. Marietta is like Tim Duncan, champion, powerhouse, the ultimate fundamental, but starting to feel a little bit older. Still a great basketball player? Absolutely. Can he still compete at the highest level? Maybe not. But if you want one of the better all-around values in Metro Atlanta, Marietta is very hard to ignore. At number 5, I've got Alpharetta. This is the polished pick. And this may come as a surprise that it's not a lot higher because Alpharetta is obviously good. It's great. Really strong schools, major job base, tech capital of the South. Avalon, downtown, restaurants, shopping, infrastructure. On paper, it checks almost every box. It's one of the most complete suburbs in the metro, and I completely understand why people love it. There is definitely a major gravitational pull around Alpharetta, both on the east side and really in Metro Atlanta as a whole. But this is also where I think the hype gets a little ahead of the value because yes, Alpharetta is awesome, but you're paying for that reputation. You are paying for the name. You are paying for the fact that it's become the default answer to so many best suburb conversations. And for me, that's exactly why it lands at number 5. I love Alpharetta. I love hanging out there. I think it's very desirable. I'm just not always convinced it's the automatic number 1 place to live that people make it out to be once you compare what its $750,000 median home price versus, some of the other options. Here's an analogy. Staying on Disney property is awesome, but can you have just as much fun at Disney staying off property? Definitely. So yes, top 5, absolutely. Automatic winner? Not for me. At number 4, I've got Cumming, the well-rounded pick. This is one of the suburbs that keeps getting stronger the more you look at it. Because if you're comparing schools, pricing, newer housing, and overall practicality, Cumming starts looking very good. You've got very strong schools, lots of newer development, some great outdoor activities, and a median home price of $600,000 that still makes more sense than some of the, other more expensive status suburbs around Atlanta. Then you add Cumming City Center, and the area suddenly has a much stronger lifestyle and gathering place story than it used to. Because one of the knocks on Cumming for a long time was good schools, good value, but where do we go? What is there to do? And I think that story has improved a lot. In more objective rankings, Cumming usually performs really well, and I think that checks out. The schools are very strong. The growth is very strong. The value can still be there. Even though the prices are slightly on the higher side, it's so big that you can find less expensive alternatives pretty easily. They just might be 10 minutes further out or in a school district that gets an 8 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. So why not top 3? Because while Cumming is very strong, the top 3 give you just as much and usually for a lower, sometimes much lower price point. But if your priority is getting a very complete family suburb without stretching as hard financially, Cumming is one of the smartest options in the metro. At number 3, I've got Canton. This is the rising star pick. Canton ranks high because I think Canton gives people one of the best combinations of space, value, schools, mountain views, and actual livability anywhere around Atlanta right now. That's the whole argument. You get more breathing room here, more of that suburban feel people say they want, but often can't afford in places like Milton or Alpharetta. And even with that extra distance, Canton doesn't feel nearly as far removed as people sometimes make it out to be. You're right along 575 to go north and south, right along 20 to go east and west, and 140 is a direct route right into Milton, Roswell, and Alpharetta. The downtown is getting way better. The Mill on Etowah is super cool. Woodstock is right there. The parks in Cherokee County are amazing. There is the guy down the road with Alpaca, as well as a Target and a full-service hospital. So you still get access to a lot while still keeping the median home price right around $500,000. And that's why Canton stands out so much to me. Because if your goal is to get a home you actually feel good about in an area with room to grow, at a price that still feels somewhat sane, Canton is one of the easiest suburbs on the list for me to recommend to actual buyers. The only reason it doesn't go higher is that the top 2 beat it in very different ways. One is the hardest suburb on the list to argue against, and the other gives you the best lifestyle to price ratio in the entire metro. At number 2, I've got Johns Creek, the on-paper king. Honestly, Johns Creek might be the hardest suburb in America to argue against right now. It keeps getting named as one of the best places to live in the country. And when you look at the school ratings, the safety scores, the accolades, and overall consistency, you start to understand why. Johns Creek feels intentional, it feels stable, it's very polished. It feels like a place where people can move and feel very confident in that decision. And that kind of consistency has some real world value. Now, Johns Creek is not cheap. It has a median home price of almost $900,000. But unlike some other expensive suburbs, I think the premium here is a little bit easier to justify because you are getting something very dependable in return. Excellent schools, highly residential feel, excellent job market, strong long-term reputation, and very few obvious weaknesses. So if it keeps ranking number 1 nationally, why am I not ranking it number 1 as well? Well, I think it's just a little bit boring. There's no downtown or city center currently. Now, that's about to change very soon. The new Medley project is set to open this October, so that could put Johns Creek out in front of everyone for a while. Or maybe that boringness was part of why Johns Creek has been so quiet and likable and ranked so high. We'll see. Johns Creek may be the smartest answer, but number 1 is the one I would rather live in. At number 1, I've got Woodstock, the best lifestyle to price ratio. Surprised? Me too. To me, Woodstock wins because it gives you the strongest overall combination of lifestyle, identity, and value anywhere around Atlanta right now. That's the key. There are suburbs on this list with better schools. There are suburbs on this list with more prestige. There are suburbs on this list with more land and luxury. But when I look at what it actually feels like to live there, the downtown, the trails, the restaurants, the walkability, the energy, the sense of place, and then I compare that to what you usually have to pay to get into the top tier names, Woodstock has a median home price of $450,000, which I think is a crazy crazy value. Downtown Woodstock is one of the best downtowns in Metro Atlanta, period. I think it might be the actual best. It has real walkability, real activity, and it keeps getting better. Roberto's, Real Taco, the parking deck, all excellent additions. A lot of suburbs try and are trying to build that kind of center and never really pull it off. Woodstock did. And the real closer for me is the price, because if I'm paying a premium, I want the lifestyle to feel worth the premium. And Woodstock gives you a lot of that top tier suburban lifestyle without demanding that same kind of money you're often looking at in places like a Milton, an Alpharetta, or Johns Creek. That's why it wins. Not because it's the richest, not because it's the flashiest, but because if I'm looking at the overall mix of desirability, day-to-day livability, and what you actually get for the money in 2026, I think Woodstock is the best overall suburb in Metro Atlanta. So if I had to break this down by type for a buyer, Woodstock is my overall best. Johns Creek is the best on paper and probably the safest answer. Canton is the rising star. Cumming is the best for growth. Alpharetta is the best polished all-around suburb. Marietta is one of the most established suburbs. Roswell has the best character. Milton is the best for luxury and land. Ackworth gives you a great lake access. And Kennesaw is still one of the more practical, easy choice suburbs in the metro. And if you're trying to figure out which one actually fits your lifestyle, your budget, and your priorities best, go ahead and reach out. That's what I help people do every day here in Metro Atlanta. And if you just want to keep researching, just watch some more videos. I'll see you in the next one.